Welcome to Darnley Cyber Cafe, your digital information haven for coffee aficionados. In an age where data is currency and every click could be a threat, knowledge is your greatest defense. I'm your host, Darnley Gresham Jr., and this is the podcast where we illuminate the dark corners of our digital world. Join us as we navigate the ever-changing currents of cybersecurity news, IT security, and the latest in the cyber landscape. Whether you're a seasoned IT professional, a business executive, or just curious about the forces shaping our digital future, Darnley Cyber Cafe is your digital coffeehouse guiding you through the noise. I'm here to break down the headlines, decode the jargon, and deliver actionable insights to protect your data, your business, and your peace of mind. So, fasten your digital seatbelts and prepare to embark on a journey through the ever-shifting world of cyber threats, news, and IT security. Darnley Cyber Cafe, your digital information haven for coffee aficionados, starts now. Episode 82. AI is going nuclear. A recent Google announcement that will change the AI game by financing the construction of US-based small nuclear reactor plants to fuel its artificial intelligence goals. This comes on the heels of the big tech giants looking to use alternative energy. Is this a great idea or another path to environmental and financial failure? Understanding that many of these tech giants are complete energy hogs with their data centers and technology literally fueling the world. This means the increase of energy demand in already energy demanding society will lead to a call for these alternative sources that perhaps solar and wind energy cannot fill in this specific void. So why nuclear energy? Does this mean that artificial intelligence would have its hand wrapped around nuclear technology to destroy the world? No. Before you go off in the conspiracy end of things, let's talk about how nuclear energy may change the world and how the world is now restarting nuclear power plants as a valid carbon neutral and time-tested alternative to power our society for tomorrow. Now, let me be clear. I am a great and stern advocate for alternative energy sources, especially in the technology era where we consume millions of gigawatts of energy to power things such as data centers that literally host most of our data in today's society. You think of all the cloud-based solutions that power our world now, this is coming from somewhere specific. Now, given the fact that coal power plants are at a steep decline as natural gas and renewable energy contributes to the majority of power distribution in North America and Europe. So what about nuclear? Now, back in 2011, with the Fukushima nuclear disaster, had many people rethink the viability of nuclear power, especially on that scale, and especially back in the 1980s with Chernobyl. There are about 54 nuclear plants in the United States and 86 in Europe. However, plans to shut down older plants already in the works. So why is Google putting its money to nuclear power again, but to build these newer modular design SMR reactor systems? And SMR means small modular reactor systems, if I ever abbreviate that moving forward. But let me tell you a story. I actually personally had a conversation with a retired nuclear scientist. Now, this is not something that I'm sure most of us get the opportunity of doing it, but he was responsible for many of the CANDU nuclear generators in Ontario, Canada. Now, this was honestly one of the most humbling experiences that I had by talking to someone in this field who had over 50 years experience. He also helped build some of the nuclear reactors in Canada. So from this great conversation I did ask him about the viability of SMRs that, to my surprise, he was completely against it. He mentioned that SMRs are good for small-scale generation, but if you wanted more power to power cities, for example, you do need bigger generating plants. Now, as I said, this was humbling as I thought simply using SMRs would eliminate the need for big, ugly, and extremely expensive nuclear plants. He also mentioned that wind and solar are not the end all to our power generation. Yes, they are a great sidearm to a power generator. However, they cannot be fully relied on in a large scale operation to meet the needs of our growing power hungry generation. Just some food for thought. I also like the fact that he he really made a good point about this. And a lot of you don't really think about this unless you are in power generation. Then excuse me. Uh, it's really about the point where we are today in terms of our power usage. You look at our grid as a whole. Look at all the technology. I'm sure all of you have more than two technological devices. You probably have subscriptions to things, audio subscriptions, video subscriptions. These videos, audio, whatever, are all stored somewhere. It's stored in a big data center, which consumes a lot of electricity. And unfortunately, given how we are today, the need for more power to power these technological devices, especially AI, as we are starting to rely on these technologies to power our life. You're seeing AI in mobile phones now, you see them in computers. So these vendors are now putting in AI in our technology. So in the next 5 years, we are going to have that ability to use AI in all of our technology. But the AI is not going to be computed at our device level. It's going to be computing on a on the internet and on various data centers all over the world. But I want you to understand too that SMRs are already having issues being born into the world. There was a news article about a company called NuScale. It's spelled NuScale. This was the only US company with a small modular design that was actually approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This was actually canceled on November 2023. The problem with this project was that the cost increased over 53% since 2021, which made it highly uncompetitive in the market. This does not make SMR reactors viable in the grand scheme of things. So we are stuck with these large-scale nuclear plants, solar and wind. Now, is nuclear energy the clean alternative? Now, while I understand some of your apprehension due to a few nuclear disasters, or even the nuclear waste disposal issue that all nuclear energy plants have this issue with, there are a few key fundamentals that need to be addressed before we wipe out the viability. SMRs are modular. They can be transported on a truck, like an 18-wheeler truck, anywhere and produce energy for a number of years without needing to be refueled. This makes it highly valuable for remote communities who rely on coal or oil to power their communities. Now, these can be any coastal countries, Arctic communities that are a bit further away from the grid, because as you are aware, the generating stations need power lines to run to various communities. So you can't realistically run power cables from one place to a faraway area by running cables. There's going to be so much loss there that it will be unsustainable. So you need to have the power plant relatively close to the places that will be consuming the energy. So this is a great opportunity for some of Aboriginal communities that are sort of isolated from the main grid to be able to have their own generation plants to provide power for their communities. Or another viable option is obviously military, which I personally think is going to be the number one reason why SMRs will become full-fledged, is because of the current threat landscape right now in the military sense, and SMRs make it just a number one prize for military powers because they need energy. And they use a lot of energy. You think about the amount of diesel generators that the military uses, the amount of fuel they go through. So in order to run a military, either at base or at a remote base, will consume a lot of power, and they usually generate their own power. So with SMRs would be a very key a military uh, resource. And I can tell you this, there are actually SMRs being built by various military contractors right now. So suffice to say, even with NuScale's failure back in 23, I can almost guarantee you that these things are about to hit the market very quickly because there's a lot of interest and a lot of money into building a SMR reactor. But by removing the storage issue in terms of the nuclear reactor waste, I'm really not going to get into detail of this because it does take a lot of time to kind of explain that. Understand that the tech companies literally have no other option to power these power-hungry AI data centers. The demand of these specific technology is increasing, as I said earlier, and the exponential. This is really increasing at an exponential rate, and the option to use fossil fuels is completely out of the question. Now, understand that SMRs will reduce their overall operating costs, along with not burning any additional fuels into the atmosphere. So, as I said, it's sort of a win-win. But wait, Darnley, how about fusion energy? Well, from what I understand and been reading for quite a number of years, we have been close to fusion power for 50 years. Now, don't get me wrong, we are actually getting closer, but it's still in the development stage. We have the technology now that will solve today's issue. I do see fusion being a big game changer in our energy markets, especially over the fact that our current energy demands are not being met. And with fusion is a completely different discussion, but I understand that some hardcore environmentalists will be knocking on my door soon, telling me how bad nuclear energy is for the world. I will state here that in my past, I actually have had some quote unquote education on green technologies, and I back it wholeheartedly. Hell, I even drove my car in hydrogen once. But you must understand the core facts at this point in time, right now, is that we do not have a complete green solution that will solve our energy and carbon reducing demanding requirements that simply solar and wind alone realistically cannot handle right now. This is why nuclear energy, albeit needed some improvement on waste management side of things, is the carbon neutral answer to our growing technological energy demands. We already have the technology. The technology has matured enough to bridge the gap between the time when we can fully adopt fusion technology. But until then, the major technology players in the global market, such as Google, will adopt these modular SMR technology solutions to continue to contribute the power, supplying the power that demands as we as consumers put on these organizations, all the while demanding lowering our carbon footprint. So we can't really sort of have our cake and eat it too. It's sort of like a chicken and an egg dilemma, is that we want to become carbon neutral, and we think by throwing wind, solar at it will solve it. But perhaps in time, but we don't have the capacity yet. And don't get me wrong, there are some countries that have gone carbon neutral by using these technologies. Yeah, 100%. Hats off to them. But for specifically about technology companies such as Google, they do require a substantial amount of energy, to run their data centers. So I'm talking more specifically about data centers that do eat a lot of energy, and they do have the requirement to run 24/7. Now think about it. If there was ever a natural disaster, and back down in the southern the US, they just had some hurricanes that knocked out a lot of energy and power and destroyed a lot of buildings. If this continues, because with the weather warming, the storms, etc., a lot of these companies need to make sure that they have the availability there. Because even if you want to use that example down in Florida, where they lost power, etc., they still require technology to do their work, emergency response, etc. So if you have a company like Google, Microsoft, or Amazon, if their data centers ever get hit by something, they usually have diesel backup generators that just keep the plant going. But with SMRs with nuclear technology, they can continue powering these data centers continuously for many years. So understand that nuclear technology in the eyes of these technology giants is really a palatable solution right now, because with current oil technologies, gas technologies, like diesel technologies, it's too costly for one. So as time goes on, as these SMR reactors slowly get down in price, it would actually be more of a feasible option to run the module SMR. And as time goes on, let's say, for example, if they need to increase their usage, then they'll be able to add on different reactors depending on the usage. So it's kind of similar to their own technology model. So to end this, to put this frankly, unless we adopt the 0-point energy that these major countries are hiding from the population, we could be a globally carbon neutral society tomorrow. But don't take my word for it. Talk to the US government. Thanks for listening to this episode of Darley Cyber Cafe. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for weekly episode releases, because in the world of cybersecurity, knowledge is power. I'll see you soon. Cheers.